It all kicked off with a woman named Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood HOA, banging on my door one Saturday morning, demanding I let her use my backyard pool for a party she was throwing that weekend, a party I wasn't even invited to. When I politely declined, she screamed about community spirit and threatened to fine me for some made-up HOA violation. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I drained the entire pool, leaving nothing but a concrete hole for her big bash. By Sunday night, Karen was so furious she called the cops, claiming I'd sabotaged her event, but she wasn't ready for the chaos that unfolded next. My name is Alex Harper, and this is the story of how a simple no turned my quiet suburban life in Willow Creek into a full-blown neighborhood showdown with Karen Mitchell, the HOA president with a vendetta for control. I'd been living in Willow Creek for 3 years, a nice, unassuming gated community with tidy lawns and friendly neighbors, or at least I thought they were friendly until Karen moved in last spring. She was a tall, wiry woman in her late 40s, always clutching a clipboard, her lips pursed like she'd just smelled something rotten. From the moment she arrived, she started enforcing obscure HOA rules nobody had ever heard of: no basketball hoops in driveways, no holiday decorations past January 7th, no pets visible in front yards without a leash, even if they were in a fenced-in area. People grumbled, but most complied to avoid her wrath. I stayed under her radar, or so I thought, until that fateful Saturday morning in July. It was around 9 a.m. when the doorbell rang like someone was trying to punch a hole through it. I opened the door to find Karen, her blonde bob haircut sharper than her tone, glaring at me. "Alex, I'm hosting a neighborhood appreciation party tomorrow," she announced, not asked, "and I need your pool. It's the only one big enough for the event." I was stunned. I barely knew her, and she hadn't even invited me to this so-called party. My pool, a 20 by 40-foot in-ground beauty, was my pride and joy, a reward for years of saving up. I kept it spotless, spending hours each week on maintenance. The idea of a horde of strangers splashing around in it, especially under Karen's command, made my skin crawl. "Karen, I'm sorry, but I'm not comfortable with that," I said, keeping my voice calm. "It's a lot of liability, and I don't know who's coming." Her eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer, her clipboard jabbed toward me like a weapon. "This is for the community, Alex. You're being selfish. The HOA bylaws encourage shared resources." I held my ground. "I don't think the bylaws say I have to hand over my private property for your party." That's when she lost it. Her face turned beet red, and she started shouting about how she'd fine me for non-compliance and make my life miserable. Neighbors peeked out their windows, but nobody intervened. I shut the door, my heart racing, but I wasn't about to cave. By noon, I'd made up my mind. If Karen thought she could bully me into submission, she was in for a surprise. I walked out to my backyard, opened the pool's drainage valve, and watched as thousands of gallons of crystal-clear water gushed out into the storm drain. It took hours, but by evening, the pool was empty, a dry, concrete basin staring back at me. I felt a mix of satisfaction and dread. I knew Karen wouldn't let this slide, but I wasn't going to let her steamroll me. Sunday morning, I woke up to the sound of cars pulling into the cul-de-sac. I peeked through my blinds and saw Karen directing people toward my backyard, her arms flailing like a traffic cop. She'd brought at least 30 people, neighbors, their kids, even some folks I didn't recognize, all carrying towels, coolers, and beach balls. I stepped outside just as she marched up to my gate, a smug grin on her face. "Open the gate, Alex. Everyone's here for the party." I crossed my arms. "There's no party, Karen. The pool's empty." Her grin vanished. She pushed past me, flung open the gate, and froze. The crowd behind her gasped, then fell silent. The empty pool looked like a giant, mocking void. Karen spun around, her voice shrill. "What did you do?" "You sabotaged my event." I shrugged. "I told you I wasn't hosting." "You didn't listen." She started screaming about how I'd ruined her community-building effort and how she'd make me pay. The neighbors shuffled awkwardly, some muttering apologies as they left, others glaring at me like I was the villain. Karen stormed off, promising consequences. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Around 7 p.m., 2 police officers knocked on my door. Karen had called them, claiming I'd vandalized her party and violated HOA regulations. The officers, a young guy named Officer Daniels and an older woman named Officer Ruiz, looked tired, like they dealt with too many petty disputes that day. I invited them in, explained the situation, and showed them the empty pool. "It's my property," I said. "I can drain it if I want." Officer Ruiz raised an eyebrow. "She said you did it to spite her." I didn't deny it. "She demanded access to my pool without permission." I said no. "That's it." They asked if Karen had any proof of vandalism or if the HOA bylaws required me to provide my pool. I handed them a copy of the bylaws, which I dug out earlier. There was nothing in there about mandatory pool sharing. Officer Daniels sighed. "Sounds like a civil dispute, not a crime. We'll talk to her." They left, and I thought I'd won a small victory. But Karen wasn't done. The next morning, I found a bright yellow notice taped to my mailbox. An HOA violation citation for maintaining an unsightly property due to my neglected pool. The fine was $500, payable within 30 days, or I'd face a lien on my house. I laughed at the absurdity, but my stomach churned. Karen was playing dirty, and she had the HOA board in her pocket. Most of the board members were her friends, handpicked at the last election when nobody else bothered to run. I called my friend Mike, a lawyer who lived a few streets over, and asked for advice. "She's overreaching," he said. "The HOA can't fine you for draining your own pool. Fight it at the next meeting." The HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday night at the community center. I spent the week preparing, gathering evidence, photos of my pristine pool before I drained it, a copy of the bylaws, and even a petition signed by a few neighbors who were fed up with Karen's tyranny. By the time I walked into the meeting, I was ready for battle. The room was packed, with about 50 residents crammed into folding chairs. Karen sat at the front, flanked by her board cronies, a smug look on her face. She opened the meeting with a speech about community values and how certain residents, she glanced at me, were undermining them. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, my voice steady. Karen demanded access to my private pool for a party I wasn't invited to. I said no. She threatened me with fines, so I drained it. Now she's citing me for $500 over a pool I own and maintain. This isn't about community, it's about control. I held up the bylaws. "Show me where it says I have to share my pool or keep it filled." The room buzzed with whispers. Karen's face tightened, but she didn't interrupt. I passed around my petition, which had 15 signatures, and the photos of my pool. "This citation is retaliation, plain and simple." Karen stood up, her voice dripping with condescension. "Alex is exaggerating. The HOA has a right to ensure properties meet community standards. An empty pool is an eyesore and a safety hazard." A few people nodded, but most looked skeptical. Then Mike stood up. "I'm a lawyer, and I've reviewed the bylaws. There's no provision for fining someone over a drained pool. Karen's citation is baseless, and if it's enforced, Alex has grounds for a lawsuit." That got everyone's attention. The board members shifted uncomfortably, and Karen's composure cracked. A neighbor named Sarah, who'd always been quiet, raised her hand. "Karen, you fined me $200 last month for leaving my trash can out an extra day. I paid it because I didn't want trouble, but this is getting ridiculous." Another neighbor, Tom, chimed in. "Yeah, you told me my mailbox was the wrong shade of beige." "It's beige, Karen." The room erupted in laughter, then applause. Karen tried to regain control, banging her gavel, but the tide was turning. Someone called for a vote to overturn my citation, and it passed 42-8. Karen's face was a mask of fury, but she had no choice but to strike the fine. I thought that was the end, but Karen had one last card to play. The next day, I got an email from the HOA announcing a proposed amendment to the bylaws. All private pools would be designated community assets during HOA-sanctioned events, with owners required to provide access or face penalties. It was a direct shot at me, and it needed a 2/3 majority vote at a special meeting in 2 weeks. I was livid, but I wasn't about to let her win. I rallied the neighborhood, knocking on doors and talking to anyone who'd listen. Most people were outraged at the idea of their private property being hijacked. Sarah and Tom helped me organize a campaign, printing flyers and starting a group chat to coordinate. We dug into Karen's history and found she'd been ousted from her last HOA in another state for similar overreach. We spread the word, and by the time the special meeting rolled around, we had a plan. The meeting was standing room only, with over 100 residents packed in. Karen presented her amendment with a polished speech about shared prosperity, but the crowd wasn't having it. I spoke first in opposition. This amendment lets the HOA seize your private property. Today it's pools, tomorrow it's your backyard or garage. Karen's not building community, she's building a fiefdom. The applause was thunderous. One by one after another, neighbors stood up, sharing their own Karen horror stories. Fines for minor infractions, threats over petty issues, even harassment for questioning her authority. When it came time to vote, the amendment was crushed, 92-14. But we didn't done. Sarah proposed a motion to remove Karen as president, citing abuse of power. It needed a simple majority, and it passed 78-20. Karen stormed out, vowing to sue, but Mike whispered to me that her case was flimsy. The room erupted in celebration, and for the first time in months, Willow Creek felt like a neighborhood again. A week later, Karen put her house up for sale. She moved out quietly, her clipboard nowhere in sight. I refilled my pool, and the next summer, I hosted a barbecue for the neighbors who'd stood by me. No HOA approval required. The cops never came back, and the HOA board, now led by Sarah, rewrote the bylaws to limit the president's power and protect homeowners' rights. Looking back, I realized saying no to Karen wasn't just about my pool. It was about standing up to a bully who thought she could run everyone's lives. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Willow Creek is ours again, and I'm damn proud to call it home.